Hi, everybody. Another Thursday. We're a little short on questions, so I'm asking outward to see if we can get some more. I really appreciate them. And the other thing, at least we have one that we can talk about. This one is from David Wimble. And he says, I was wondering, is negatively programmed thought forms that I am able to notice one layer at a time, or is it a frequency of energy within our personality that is expressing itself through our own grid, making existing thought forms negative? Oh, in a kind of a way, it's a little bit of both. You know, when you're dealing with things that have occurred in your life that you're trying to make sense of. We do all kinds of strange things as a personality, and they're not strange in the way that bad or good. They're more in the line of, how can I make sense of something? How can I get myself to understand how things should be? And we're basically, in a kind of a way, storytellers. Doesn't mean that's negative, or it doesn't mean it's positive either. It means we come up with something that seems to make sense at the time. Unfortunately or fortunately, could be both, either one, those stories stick with us as if they're perfect truths. And they're just things that we do our best to make sense of in a way that relates to kind of how we're, you can say programmed, but set up to make sense of things. And that setup really is related very much to how we engage with and make sense of our backgrounds. It isn't a perfect way of doing things, but nonetheless, it's a way that we end up attempting to make a kind of view that supports our relationship with living from one perspective. So, in a kind of a way, when you're dealing with things like this, we don't necessarily, we think more in terms of ourselves, so we don't necessarily think in terms of others being in a similar position to us. And they make up their own version of how they believe they need to make sense of things, as we were saying. And they deal with their own story making and come up with something that's reasonably okay for them. On top of that lies a comforter like a blanket. And that blanket usually is engaged with trying to set up a value system that allows us to attempt to understand life generally. Since a whole bunch of people are doing the same thing in their own way, not necessarily exactly the same as we might, but in their own way, that creates a kind of intensity or energy that has a similar twist, even if it doesn't look like the same story. The twist is related to comforting oneself. And how that occurs can have a negative twist or a positive twist, the two opposites. But there's a whole bunch of stuff in the middle. And what it ends up being is relating to a zone within an individual that relates to, in a kind of a way, fundamentally valuing the individual. So we tend to set up a system that might value ourselves for a purpose of handling the various kinds of experiences that occur in each and every one of us. And they can be positive or not so positive, or a whole bunch of stuff in between. It's very interesting that we do have this methodology, and in behind it, it's a relationship with how we need, from our perspective, to be comforted in a versioning of how a life or how an individual engages in a manner that comforts them. Wow, holy smokes. You can have 6 children in a family, and each and every one of them come at things from a different angle. Well, you can have 8 billion plus people in a world, and each of them comes at it from a different angle. But the angle it leans towards is the angle that makes virtual sense of a life. It's not really exactly real. It's not necessarily always true, whether it be negative or positive, but it comes at a virtual angle. We come at it from a different perspective, one could say, and sense out a way of expressing that would comfort a relationship with life. It's a dilemma, because when you listen to other people who have had similar experiences, they come at it from a different perspective, angle, whatever you want to call it, and they have a different versioning of how one should be under a given set of circumstances. This continues on through any version of experience, and doesn't always turn out to be very comforting from one slant of perceiving. So you may listen to a story from another person, and they come up with an idea relative to their experience, and you might hear that or see how they act, and they act differently than how they should, you could say. The unfortunate part about that, it is you're not living their life. Therefore, there's no should in it. And no matter how they function, they're basically coming at that life from a place that relates directly to their systematic relationship with their background. So you can call it programming or whatever, but in a kind of a way, it's not necessarily a programming. It's a system that relates to a background and how they make sense of that background, and how they deal with their own vulnerabilities and their own versions of what they think they have to believe as truths. Same system, from other people see things differently and how they need to function differently. Sounds pretty complicated. The additional thing is, if a number of people all across our world do something very similar, not the same, similar, then they do it with an intensity internally that may be similar in relationship to how they function. So the intensity is similar. The intensity is similar. Then you have a link up with actually millions of people who actually live with similar intensities. But they may put words to that intensity that are different than other folk who might put different words to the same intensity, see it differently. Then you have to be a little careful about the judgment that goes on about other people's way of using the same intensity. That judgment is usually based on one singular orientation. The judgment is there to preserve how you see others functioning. Therefore, you're preserving yourself. And in fact, in that particular way of engaging, you are exuding energy in the direction of others that multiplies their particular intensity. Now that's related to energy, and all of us as energy beings, of course. There is a formulation of logic, subjective, fine, logic that relates to how a person should be if they are like this, they are like that. And in fact, many in psychology or philosophy, many people have tried to make sense of how we act in relationship to various situations or various complexities in our lives. And some people act one way, some people act another, others act a different way, and others act another way. Same intensity. The intensity is there to protect oneself against being devalued. It's stunningly fascinating, but argumentatively not necessarily seen as stunning or as interesting, but seen as, from a so-called objective point of view, as a way one should not act out to be a perfect human being. It's a dilemma. Since our world is not a perfect world, and it never has been, and the human beings in it are not perfect at this stage in their development, not perfection meaning not able to engage with higher states in such a manner as to be able to watch and see exactly how they function at any given moment and try to make adjustments of some kind, knowing full well that their adjustments will not be perfect. Kind of a semi-perfect individual. None of us can do that very well, but we can do it to some degree just by looking, observing, watching what you do, and attempting incrementally, little at a time, to make adjustments the best you possibly can. And in doing that, there is a shocking thing that begins to occur. And that shocking thing is, there's a bit of understanding that begins to flare within the minds of those who would attempt to do so. There is a bit of recognition within them that they also do something similar, but not exactly like that, of course. And then ultimately, it's called at least empathizing with another person's inability to function very well or perfectly, because there's no dictate, there's no template of total perfection in a world that relates to an engagement with living life, with all its foibles. Life has foibles, and so do we as individuals. So we do the best we can, and that means you're not going to be able to do anything related to perfection. If you can handle that, then you can actually handle being a human being. Structurally, that's who we are. We have animal natures. We're physically focused. We have emotional dispositions. Whether we act as if they're emotional or not, we're cold stone a little bit when we're not emotional. We are just mental beings. We are not. If you have a reaction to anything, you are reacting. That reaction is emotional. And we're moving towards a kind of mental engagement. And mental engagement is not what we think, I don't think. That mental engagement orientation that many have tried to figure out, philosophers have been zeroing in on this often and attempting to figure out what mind is, how we engage with mind, and why mind is so important, and recognizing that our emotional intensity cultivates a thing that we call logic or a mental something. And then when we don't have people who agree with us, we have an emotional reaction, which stimulates a way of thinking which is truly subjective and emotional, based on the program that we already set up within ourselves. And truly, this is where we are. This is not bad, good, negative, or it may be possible that seeing into the vulnerability that we have as human beings, and remembering that others have them too, may be a precursor to allowing a kind of thought process that is not related to belief, not related to what we have to think to be accepted by others, what we have to be according to ourselves, idealistically, which we cannot attain because it isn't attainable. Because as we grow internally, our focal point is to attempt to broaden out an understanding of how a human being is. But that includes not being comfortable and being comfortable at the same time in our world. A very interesting question comes up, the next one. How much of the negativity we experience is just part of being in the world with its centuries of negativity? It is possible that the impact of various intensities that have been expressed and are being expressed and will be expressed moment to moment have an impact on us. If one human being has an impact on another, Now I'm saying this energetically, but with the kind of intensity that has purpose behind it, of a kind, no matter what the kind is. If that affects you, then you are, with your effects, going to affect the person who affects you. Because you are transmitting, sounds weird, energy to that person that you don't like, so that they can be more of what you don't like. Because that's what you're transmitting. It is a shock to find out that much of our engagement with life is reflexive. The same is true in our thinking process. We come up with things that tend to validate, not always validate, but tend to validate, a kind of way of looking at life that we nurture as valuable. That makes sense. Because in our nurturing, we seek validation. But in our nurturing, we also tend to judge others who don't nurture a way of engaging with life similar to ours. 8.5, or roughly, certainly more than 8 billion people on the planet do something similar. We find it very difficult to prove that that kind of intensity exists mechanically. We don't have the subtlety, not yet, of measuring negative or positive intensity. But we have an inbuilt manner of engaging with people that depends deeply on our presumed valuable way of assessing others. And we do this systematically, but mainly reflexively. We attempt to do it less than reflexively from time to time, and this has worked out in relationship to science, in relationship to attempting to understand people, understand the world, and yet we have collisions of ideas that come to bear on a society, on many societies, and culturally, we reflexively respond to other cultures, for example. And we don't quite get that we are protecting our own versions of cultural proclivity based on the need we have to be comfortable in our personal views. This is the nature that's current all over the world. It's not this part of the world versus other people, and we're more terrible at it than they are. Everybody has a united engagement with self-protection. This is an intensity that maybe has always been. We have a lot more people now than there ever have been. That means a lot more individuality. Groups that form related to their version of something being more important than other people's version of the same thing. One nation against another nation. One culture against another culture. Basic nonsense. But not basic nonsense for children. And I keep saying this, but we are young. To cross those boundaries and engage with each other, trying to reach for a common target, a common purpose, and enabling individuals to be helpful to each other, whether it be in science, whether it be in philosophy, religion, humanities, anything that is part of an engagement with life here on these planes. This is very difficult for us. But we like to speak and say, we do that all the time. Oh, I remember so-and-so, and I gave them some good information they couldn't get themselves. Yep, great, good for you. We have a long way to go in this one. We also have a long way to go in beating up ourselves about life and how we've engaged with it. If you can learn to soften down your own behavior and judgment, and you're linked up to others who can't, you will be helping them to do the same thing. Because if we are attached to each other in relationship to life and how much we individually love our own versions of what that might be, whether we hate it or not, we maintain the hating. That is a love for the hating. Or whether it's wondrous and wonderful, and that we maintain. We don't want anybody to interact with that one in any kind of a way that changes something. We start slowly to think about the understanding or the possibility that by doing some small thing in our own lives to help us do something slightly different has an effect on everyone who acts like us. And I'm pretty well assured that there are others in the world who act like us in the process of self-preservation. This self that doesn't really exist. It's just a form of accumulating energy that we personalize and use because it's the thing we know. It's all we can perceive. Things are not as simple as all of that, and I realize that. I realize it within myself. Why would anyone else not have it that way? We're complex individuals. And we want to be that way. Because it's important for us to realize that we grow through us. And if we have a harshness related to ourselves, within ourselves, or to others within ourselves, that increases the value of that harshness as you protect your own harshness against yourself or others. Not so easy pretty darn complex. So go slow with that. Because in going slow, you get to see some things that you may be doing that you can just slowly, not necessarily agree with it 100%. That little bit of growth has an effect on others. So you can help others by doing this. This is big. Huge impact. So many people have said, what can I do? I mean, I can't do anything. In fact, you can do something within yourself. There's no guarantees. Because if suddenly a person has a different thing in their mind that they can do, that other than what they've been practicing, they can fight that off and move towards doing something similar to what they did before. It's possible and likely because the reflex is so strong and it's so well indented in our behaviors, our responses, and our so-called thought processes, whether they be emotionally based or other based. So what I would suggest is you go slow and be respectful the best you can. And there'll be times when you can't be. Know that there are times that you can't be. Understand that that's real. And move in a direction the best you can to be as understanding as you can. And that, I think, is difficult as well. It comes second to the need that we have to protect what we believe has to be true because it's us that believes it. This is the nature of being a human being. But you've also seen within yourselves the ability to reconsider what you believe has to be true, or what behaviors you need to have. Do it the best you can. That's what you can do. That may look different from person to person, but in any event, it may be the beginning of being able to perceive and act slightly different than you could before. That will be helpful. From one point of view, that is. I really wish you well with that. Thank you, David, for the question. I have another question, but I think it's more personalized, and I'll have to talk to people about that. So I'm not going to get into that other question. So what I'm going to do, though, is I'm going to say, since we have no other questions, what I'm going to do is I'm going to call it a night, and we're going to meditate for about an hour. Please, if you can, you understand why I ask for questions. I would rather you ask the question and we can talk about something that would be helpful to you because it's your question and the question relates to others. And that is better than me coming up with something and just generally talking about it because it's something that I like to think is valuable. So what we're going to do now is we're going to meditate, and Marlene will set up probably some music so that we can do so. These questions, this is a really important question that David sent in, because I think when you're looking at reflexive responding, it's never easy to understand that reflex is of great value to you, no matter what the reflex is, because it's one that has been honed for a purpose, and often through misunderstanding. But since we don't have any perfection on these levels, we're seeking out all the time to try to understand beyond where we can understand. And unfortunately, that is highly influenced by, as I said before, our culture. And our culture is a good culture, solid, but it holds in positions so that we can't move forward as easily, because it's considered to be the thing that you should do. It's what, might be this way or that way, whatever that way is. So go gently, but with as much honesty to yourself. Never mind other people. You can be honest to them too if you want, but they don't have to know your stuff. You get to know your stuff and smile a bit and recognize that everything within you has an impact on you. But it doesn't have to be deeply embedded in a overly negative or overly elevative manner. It's recognizing humanity in you that really helps you to be honest with yourself. Please take care, everybody, and we'll now do some meditating. Good night.
रत्नैः कल्पितमासनं हिमजलैः स्नानं च दिव्याम्बरम् नानारत्नविभूषितं मृगमदामोदाङ्कितं चन्दनम् जातिचम्पकबिल्बपत्ररचितं पुष्पं च धूपं तथा दीपं देवदयानिधे पशुपते हृत्कल्पितं गृह्यताम् सौवर्णेन नवरत्नखण्डरचिते पात्रे घृतं पायसम् भक्ष्यं पञ्चविधं पयोदधियुतं रम्भाफलं पानकम् शाकानामयतं जलं रुचिकरं कर्पूरखण्डोज्ज्वलम् ताम्बूलं मनसा मया विरचितं भक्त्या प्रभो स्वीकुरु। छत्रं चामरयोर्युगं व्यजनकं चादर्शकं निर्मलम् वीणाभैरिमृदङ्गकोहलकला गीतं च नृत्यं तथा साष्टाङ्गं प्रणतिः स्तुतिर्बहुविधा एतत् समस्तं मया सङ्कल्पेन समर्पितं तव विभो पूजां ग्रहाण प्रभो। आत्मा त्वं गिरिजामते सहचराः प्राणाः शरीरं ग्रहम् पूजा ते विषयोपभोगरचना निद्रा समाधिस्थितिः सञ्चारः पदयोः प्रदक्षिणविधि स्तोत्राणि सर्वा गिरो यत् कर्म करोमि तत् अखिलम् शम्भो तवाराधनम्। करचरणकृतं वा कायजं कर्मजं वा श्रवणनयनजं वा मानसं वापराधम् विहितमविहितं वा सर्वमेतच्छमस्व। जय जय करुणाब्धे श्री महादेव शम्भो। न तातो न माता न बन्धुर्न दाता न पुत्रो न पुत्री न भृत्यो न भर्ता न जाया न वेद्या न वृत्तिर्ममैव गतिस्त्वं गतिस्त्वं त्वमेका भवानि गतिस्त्वं गतिस्त्वं त्वमेका भवानि भवाब्धावपारे महादुःखभीरो प्रपात प्रकामी प्रलोभी प्रमत्ता कुसंसारपाश प्रबद्धः सदाहं गतिस्त्वं गतिस्त्वं त्वमेका भवानि गतिस्त्वं गतिस्त्वं त्वमेका भवानि न जानामि दानं न च ध्यानयोगम् न जानामि तन्त्रं न च स्तोत्रमन्त्रम् न जानामि पूजां न च न्यासयोगम् गतिस्त्वं गतिस्त्वं त्वमेका भवानि गतिस्त्वं गतिस्त्वं त्वमेका भवानि न जानामि पुण्यं न जानामि तीर्थम् न जानामि मुक्तिं लयं वा कदाचित् न जानामि भक्तिं व्रतं वापि माता गतिस्त्वं गतिस्त्वं त्वमेका भवानि गतिस्त्वं गतिस्त्वं त्वमेका भवानि कुकर्मी कुसङ्गी कुबुद्धि कुदास कुलाचारहीन कदाचारलीन कुदृष्टि कुवाक्य प्रबन्ध सदाहम् गतिस्त्वं गतिस्त्वं त्वमेका भवानि गतिस्त्वं गतिस्त्वं त्वमेका भवानि व्रजेशं रमेशं महेशं सुरेशं दिनेशं निशीथेश्वरं वा कदाचित् न जानामि चान्यत् सदाहं शरण्ये गतिस्त्वं गतिस्त्वं त्वमेका भवानि गतिस्त्वं गतिस्त्वं त्वमेका भवानि विवादे विषादे प्रमादे प्रवासे जले चानले पर्वते शत्रुमध्ये अरण्ये शरण्ये सदा मां प्रपाहि गतिस्त्वं गतिस्त्वं त्वमेका भवानि गतिस्त्वं गतिस्त्वं त्वमेका भवानि अनाथो दरिद्रो जरारोगयुक्तो महाक्षीणदीन सदा जाड्यवक्त्रा विपत्तौ प्रविष्ट प्रणष्ट सदाहम् गतिस्त्वं गतिस्त्वं त्वमेका भवानि गतिस्त्वं गतिस्त्वं त्वमेका भवानि गतिस्त्वं गतिस्त्वं त्वमेका भवानि शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं शिवस्वरूपोऽहं शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं शिवस्वरूपोऽहम् नित्योऽहं शुद्धोऽहं बुद्धोऽहं मुक्तोऽहम् नित्योऽहं शुद्धोऽहं बुद्धोऽहं मुक्तोऽहम् शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं शिवस्वरूपोऽहम् शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं शिवस्वरूपोऽहम् नित्योऽहं शुद्धोऽहं बुद्धोऽहं मुक्तोऽहम् नित्योऽहं शुद्धोऽहं बुद्धोऽहं मुक्तोऽहम् शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं शिवस्वरूपोऽहम् शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं शिवस्वरूपोऽहम् अद्वैतमानन्द रूपं अरूपम् अद्वैतमानन्द रूपं अरूपम् ब्रह्मोऽहं ब्रह्मोऽहं ब्रह्मस्वरूपोऽहम् ब्रह्मोऽहं ब्रह्मोऽहं ब्रह्मस्वरूपोऽहम् चिदोऽहं चिदोऽहं सच्चिदानन्दोऽहं चिदोऽहं चिदोऽहं सच्चिदानन्दोऽहम् शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं शिवस्वरूपोऽहम् शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं शिवस्वरूपोऽहम् नित्योऽहं शुद्धोऽहं बुद्धोऽहं मुक्तोऽहम् नित्योऽहं शुद्धोऽहं बुद्धोऽहं मुक्तोऽहम् शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं शिवस्वरूपोऽहम् शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं शिवस्वरूपोऽहम् शिवस्वरूपोऽहम् चित्तानि नाहं न च श्रोत्रजिह्वे न च घ्राणनेत्रे न च व्योमभूमिर्न तेजो न वायु चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं न च प्राणसंज्ञो न वै पञ्चवायु न वा सप्तधातु न वा पञ्चकोश न वाक्पाणिपादं न चोपस्तपायु चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं न मे द्वेषरागो न मे लोभमोहो मदोर्नैव मे नैव मात्सर्यभावः न धर्मो न चार्थो न कामो न मोक्षः चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं न पुण्यं न पापं न सौख्यं न दुःखं न मन्त्रो न तीर्थं न वेदा न यज्ञः अहं भोजनं नैव भोज्यं न भोक्ता चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं न मृत्युर्न शङ्का न मे जातिभेदः पिता नैव मे नैव माता न जन्म न बन्धो न मित्रं गुरो नैव शिष्यः चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहम् अहं निर्विकल्पः सर्वत्र सर्वेन्द्रियाणां न च सङ्गतं न रूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं 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 शिवोऽहम् ब्रह्ममुरारिसुरार्चितलिङ्गं निर्मलभासितशोभितलिङ्गम् जन्मजदुःखविनाशकलिङ्गम् तत्प्रणमामि सदा शिवलिङ्गम्
And now we'll just do the balancing and grounding. Sorry about the music. Our software just went a little fluey. And we'll do better next time.